And welcome back to the Factor Uncensored. Very important topic here tonight. University of Houston researchers have joined in the fight against fentanyl. They are working on a preventative vaccine. The synthetic opioid is the most dangerous drug in the United States, in U.S. history, and around the world. Take it seriously, folks. More than 71,000 people died from fentanyl overdoses in 2021 alone. Here's Dr. Colin Hale.
The treatments that we have right now are clearly not working, and we need a different strategy to address this. And we think this anti-fentanyl vaccine will do that. One part of our vaccine is already in 2 vaccines on the market already and have been proven safe and effective. Another part of our vaccine has already been in humans, been in multiple clinical trials, and has also been shown to be safe and effective.
Dr. Danish Ali is here on the Factor Uncensored tonight from Arch Point Pain Institute. You have been ringing the alarm about this for quite some time now, for about 2 years or more. When you hear a possible vaccine for something like this, your thoughts on it?
It's very exciting, Isaiah. This is something that, you know, as we just mentioned, there are so many deaths. This is one of the most common things that we're seeing overdose deaths related to. And so if there's anything that we can do to fight this, there's always promising news behind that, right? So let's put this in perspective. The study came out in October of 2022 where they looked at mice and they put these antibodies and these vaccines in these mice, and they saw that when they did that and they exposed them to fentanyl, that they did not have the same response as those rats that did with the fentanyl itself. Whereas the euphoria, the respiratory depression, the death, all of those things that we see from that. So that is very promising news that we're seeing out of these studies.
And I want to emphasize to the viewer out there just again how deadly, how dangerous fentanyl is. I mean, it's almost something that's too small to see on your fingertip, and it could kill you.
That's correct, Isaiah. A small powder, just a powder form of it, can be laced in with other drugs. It may be laced in with cocaine, heroin, marijuana, other things you just don't know. And it gets laced in by these street sellers and folks who lace it to give that extra high, to give that extra little boost. And sometimes that little amount can be just enough to cause respiratory depression and even death in some of these cases.
And that's a good point to emphasize, because someone came up to me and said, people are on this fentanyl. People don't know that they're on this
exactly
fentanyl.
Right, right. And
they include it in the ingredients of, like you said, like the cocaine, the marijuana, what have you, just to give it that extra boost, and they don't realize they're putting their lives on the line.
That's exactly right. These are very inexpensively synthetic made drugs, and so when you lace it with other things, it increases the street value. It gives folks that high that they're desiring, and unfortunately we've seen a result of that where young kids, teenagers have gotten their hands on this, and it's been deadly for them.
I can remember, like, back in the early 2000s, there was like Kush.
That's correct.
Instead of the marijuana. Right. And this was synthetic. And people were taking that, and they were like zombies.
That's
you
correct.
know, you'd find mainly homeless individuals in downtown Houston just passed out or in a daze.
Right. And that's what we're seeing now with the fentanyl as well. The trauma hospitals like Bentab, these are flooded with these sorts of cases that they're seeing all these overdose-related folks coming into the hospital with respiratory issues, with the inability to walk, move their limbs, and even death, as we're seeing.
Now, until something like this vaccine is out there, there is a backup.
There is, right. And so let's make sure that we discuss the difference, right? So this is more of a preventative thing, right? These vaccines, if you have a child or somebody you know that may be at a risk or maybe consuming drugs or street drugs, this is going to be for them, right? Versus the Narcan medication that we've talked about for years is more for folks who develop that respiratory depression after consuming something. So they're two different things, and they work differently. And the other thing, the last thing I want to mention is, Isaiah, that we're still years out from having the actual vaccine available in the hands of individuals. So there's still a long time, a lot of research that still needs to be done, clinical trials that need to happen before this will be available.
Now, while you say Narcan is a response, how would you use this potential vaccine? would you take it like, I
Right.
know I'm a drug addict, so let me take a shot of this?
Right, that's correct. And so instead of, there's folks who have like opioid use disorder, or they've been consuming opioids for many years, and now they want to get off of that. There are other medications, and so this is just an adjunct to that, right? That's one phenomenon. The other phenomenon is what we've been talking about and alluding to, is these kids, these folks who do drugs, and this medication or this vaccine itself binded specifically to the fentanyl receptors, right? It did not bind to the other receptors, and so if you've got somebody who's doing methadone or buprenorphine and other medications, you can continue to do that, and it won't affect that. It affects the fentanyl. All
right, Dr. Donna Shaw Lee, Arch Point Pain Institute, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your expertise as usual.